What if one single courtroom admission could change the entire direction of a celebrity legal battle? In a recent hearing involving Blake Lively, her own legal team revealed something that many people did not expect, and it immediately raised serious questions about strategy, evidence, and timing. Some legal observers believe this moment could influence the judge's upcoming rulings and possibly the future of the case. So what exactly was said in court, and why is everyone suddenly paying attention? Let's break down the moment that has people talking. First, imagine the scene: a glamorous red carpet moment, cameras flashing, reporters smiling, and a playful exchange about fashion and high-waisted pants, the kind of lighthearted moment that normally fades into celebrity interview history. But behind the laughter, something far more serious was quietly unfolding far away from the spotlight, a courtroom discussion that could change the entire direction of a high-profile legal battle involving Blake Lively. And a growing storm of legal arguments, strategic filings, and intense scrutiny from the public and media. What seemed like just another procedural hearing suddenly revealed something that caught many observers off guard: a moment when Blake Lively's legal team openly explained why a critical motion known as a spoliation motion was filed, and why they wanted the judge to consider it alongside the motion for summary judgment. And that small detail created a ripple effect across the entire conversation, because it suggested that the timing of the motion might not simply be routine legal strategy, but part of a broader attempt to shape how the judge evaluates the evidence in the case. The attorney carefully explained that if the court determines evidence may have been deleted or destroyed, then the judge could draw what are known as adverse inferences, meaning the court might assume that missing evidence would have been unfavorable to the other side, and that possibility alone could dramatically shift how the judge views the remaining claims, particularly the allegation that a digital campaign or retaliation campaign occurred. Suddenly, what had looked like a routine legal filing began to feel like a strategic turning point, because if the spoliation motion succeeds, it could narrow the issues heading into trial and influence how both sides prepare their arguments. But if it fails, the entire narrative changes, and critics of the motion argue that it may indicate the case lacks enough direct evidence to stand on its own without relying on the assumption that something important was destroyed. And this is where the tension in the courtroom began to rise, because the defense quickly pushed back, suggesting that the judge should first decide the motion for judgment on the pleadings and the motion for summary judgment before even considering spoliation, arguing that those decisions alone might resolve the case entirely, making the spoliation question unnecessary. And for a moment, the courtroom seemed to pause between two competing strategies: one side hoping the spoliation issue reshapes the judge's view of the evidence, and the other insisting that the core legal motions should determine whether the case survives at all. As the discussion continued, another issue quietly entered the spotlight: the question of publicity, and whether certain attorneys involved in the case should face sanctions related to their public statements. Blake Lively's legal team argued that controlling public commentary might be necessary before the trial begins, warning that intense media attention could influence how the case unfolds. But the judge's reaction appeared cautious rather than immediate. Instead of agreeing to act right away, the judge pointed out that concerns about publicity are often addressed through a motion in limine, which is a request to set boundaries on what can be discussed or presented during the trial, and how certain statements might be handled. This response hinted that the court may prefer to address media-related issues later rather than making early decisions that could restrict legal advocacy, and the exchange created a noticeable shift in tone, because observers sensed the judge was more focused on managing the overall process than rushing to grant the specific requests being presented. Meanwhile, the defense attorney responded calmly, emphasizing that the central question remains whether the main legal motions should be decided first, because those rulings would shape everything else, including Whether a trial is even necessary, the defense suggested that if the summary judgment motion succeeds, large portions of the case could disappear, making other disputes irrelevant, and this perspective placed enormous weight on the judge's upcoming decisions, since summary judgment can end a case before it reaches a jury, and the courtroom discussion subtly highlighted how much now depends on the judge's interpretation of the evidence, the legal standards, and the sequence in which these motions are resolved. While both sides presented their reasoning, the judge refrained from giving immediate answers, instead acknowledging the large number of pending motions and emphasizing that the court is aware its rulings will determine what remains for trial and what is not. That careful, measured response left everyone waiting for the next move, because the order in which these decisions are issued could dramatically alter the legal landscape surrounding the case beyond the courtroom strategy. Another layer of complexity involves the upcoming motions in limine, which both sides are preparing to file. These motions allow attorneys to request that certain evidence or arguments be excluded before the trial begins. For example, one side might ask the court to prevent references to unrelated controversies, past disputes, or media speculation, while the other side might attempt to limit certain communications, expert testimony, or damage calculations from being presented to a jury. The goal is to ensure that only evidence considered legally relevant and reliable reaches the courtroom, and in a case surrounded by intense public discussion, these requests could significantly shape what jurors eventually hear. One major focus could involve expert witnesses, especially those who analyze digital campaigns, reputation damage, or financial losses, because courts require experts to use methods that are widely accepted and grounded in reliable data. If a judge determines an expert's methodology is speculative or unsupported, the testimony can be excluded entirely through what are known as Daubert motions, and that possibility adds yet another layer of uncertainty, because expert analysis often plays a critical role in explaining complex claims about online narratives, media coverage, or business impact. Some observers have noted that calculations based on online impressions or media reach may face scrutiny, depending on how those figures are connected to actual measurable harm, while supporters of such analysis argue that digital visibility can influence reputation and business outcomes. The court will ultimately determine which arguments meet the legal threshold for admissibility and which do not, and this debate highlights how modern legal disputes increasingly intersect with the digital media landscape, where articles, social media commentary, and viral discussions can amplify public attention around a case. But the law still requires a clear connection between action statements and proven damages, and because of that standard, the upcoming rulings on expert testimony could play a decisive role in determining how the narrative of the case is presented. If the trial moves forward, what makes the current moment particularly suspenseful is the timeline, because the judge indicated that several major rulings may arrive before the deadline for those pretrial motions, giving both sides limited time to adjust their strategies depending on the outcome. If summary judgment eliminates key claims, then the scope of the trial could shrink dramatically or disappear altogether. But if the judge allows significant portions of the case to proceed, the parties will need to move quickly to decide which evidence should be challenged, excluded, or emphasized, and that uncertainty has created an atmosphere of anticipation among legal observers, because every pending order carries the potential to reshape the dispute. One ruling might narrow the claims, another might redefine what evidence is considered relevant, and another could determine whether certain experts are permitted to testify. The judge also raised broader concerns about transparency and the handling of sealed documents, noting the importance of balancing privacy with the public interest, especially in cases that attract widespread attention and involve issues of free expression and media coverage. This focus on openness suggested that the court is carefully considering not only the legal arguments, but also how the proceedings are viewed by the public and the press, and as both sides wait for the next decisions, the tension continues to build because the upcoming rulings will likely clarify whether the case moves closer to trial or toward resolution behind closed doors. For now, the legal chessboard remains set, each motion, each response, and each judicial order forming part of a larger story that is still unfolding at this stage. The entire case stands at a crossroads where a few critical judicial decisions could reshape everything that follows. The debate over spoliation, summary judgment, publicity, and expert testimony reveals how complex modern legal disputes can become, especially when they intersect with public attention and digital media narratives. While some observers interpret recent courtroom exchanges as strategic maneuvering, others view them as standard legal advocacy within a high-stakes case. Ultimately, the judge will determine which motions carry legal weight and which arguments move forward toward trial in the coming weeks. Those rulings are expected to clarify whether the dispute continues in court or narrows, significantly leaving both sides preparing for every possible outcome. For viewers and followers of the story, the most important takeaway is that the legal process is still unfolding, and the final direction of the case will depend not on speculation, but on the court's interpretation of the evidence and the law. As the next chapter approaches, the anticipation continues to build, because one decision could change the entire narrative overnight.